Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video, I am going to get into a little firearms maintenance. It's time to get a scope mounted up, leveraging this Warbull scope leveling kit. Now at this point, I have mounted scopes a number of different ways, and I haven't really, at this point in my firearms career, had the appropriate tools. I've made it work. I've used levels, bubble levels, and things like that to get my scopes fairly close to level, but I've never had a nice leveling kit, and today I think this is absolutely going to help aid in my overall success, my ability to get my scope dialed in, and hopefully more accurate with my shots. Now in combination with this, I am going to be leveraging my Vortex Crossfire 2. Very simple, fairly cheap scope, all things considered, but lightweight and the appropriate optical range for my Ruger 1022. So here the Ruger 1022. I have it outfit in the Magpul Hunter stock. I'm going to get this thing fully mounted, nice and level. Go to the range, hopefully be able to zero in fairly easily and effectively. And I'm hoping I can tighten up my groups just a bit over where I've been in the past. But with 22 and cheap ammo and my general skills, who really knows? But at minimum, we'll go through this in detail with the Warbull scope leveling kit. And so with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now, before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Warbull who did provide this for review. And so, as we get this underway, I have leveraged a number of Warbull products at this point, and they've all been great. I would put them more on the budget side of things, but just because it's budget doesn't mean it doesn't perform well. And so, in the case of Warbull, all of their products have performed very well for their given function. Now, you can see that with Warbull products, they are designed by Veterans USA Designs. However, they are made overseas, so that's just something worth considering. But again, in my opinion, the Warbull products have performed extremely well. They've been well designed, well made, and again, just function for their given need. And so you do end up with a simple little set of instructions, the tools that you need to make adjustments, and the Warbull leveling kit itself, which here you can see in this copper color. There are a couple of different offerings, and I opted for the copper color because to me it just kind of sticks out. You can see it easy, and I like the fact that this comes fully self-contained in a simple little case, nice and enclosed. The ability to throw this in your range bag or throw it in your, storage locker or something like that with no problem. No fear that you're going to damage the equipment. Now, right in the kit, the main level here, so this is your barrel level clamp. So this is typically used on the barrel, and we're gonna experiment just a little bit. Again, for me, this is reasonably new. I mean, I know what I have to do, but it's just a matter of putting this into practice and getting everything right. But the first thing you can see is actually on the inside, which is nice little rubber gasket to help protect your barrel. So hopefully I won't end up with any marring. My particular barrel here does have a Cerakote finish. So as you look here, a bronze Cerakote finish. And of course you do want to protect your finishes. So the fact that it has that rubberized gasket is sweet. And then also inside, 2 reference levels. So these are used periodically for various different parts of this process and then kind of put aside as you move forward. Now, as I move through this process, things will be slightly similar and slightly different to your setups at the same time. So first off, you can see that my scope rings will be sitting on my pick rail. So depending on your setup, you may or may not have a pick rail. You might have some dedicated scope ring mounts. It just depends. Scope rings will vary, but the main thing being obviously needing scope rings that are compatible with your setup. So in this case, my scope ring sitting on that pick rail and appropriate diameter for the tube of my scope. Now at this point, this is loose. You can see the scope will rotate. I'm not going to spin it too much, but you can see it is not tightened down just yet. So this is at a point where I do now need to start thinking about level and making sure that everything is appropriately aligned. Now again, as you get this started, you are going to need some sort of a platform to be able to keep everything level. The main thing for me is left and right. You're not really terribly concerned with front and back so much as you are with left and right. But for me, I do like to kind of just keep everything nice and level for the most part, so I have a level of reference and the ability to just work carefully. So I've leveraged a couple of bench rests, a sandbag, which should hold everything fairly steady. And at this point, you can see that on my receiver, I have that nice and level. And now that I have my receiver level, I can leverage the barrel clamp and that level to make sure that everything stays in place exactly where I need it. So at this point, this is going to go onto the barrel. I'm going to make sure that my receiver and my barrel level are reading the same level adjustment, and then at that point I'm pretty much ready to continue to move forward. And so pretty straightforward, just loosening up the clamp. I'm going to get this in place. Now there are some adjustments that can be made. I'm going to try to minimize how much I mess with things. I'm just going to try to get this as level as I can onto the barrel in the first place. But you can certainly use the little leveling screw. You can see on top there is a leveling screw. But just going to get everything clamped down fairly tight, but not crush it down. Again, I don't want to unnecessarily cause any damage to my Cerakote finish. Now, some people will say, don't center the bubble. Rather, put the actual firearm at a slight tilt so that the bubble goes to the edge of the line. And that gives you a real true reference point. And I'm going to try that just for the sake of the argument here. So even though this isn't perfectly level, I am going to get it to the line so that everything is in true alignment. And holding this in place, clamping it down. And that looks to be just about perfect. Now again, if you need to make adjustments, you can use this little leveling screw here. But you're going to need to be careful, because that will move. So once you get that set, just kind of steer clear of it. Which now you can see my reference bubble on the receiver. The top side of the bubble just kissing that upper line, which is exactly the same as my barrel bubble. So both of them now reading exactly the same. And so now I have mounted my scope onto the pick rail, tightened down the rings onto the pick rail, but I'm still loose on the scope itself. So now that I'm moving forward, trying to get everything back to reasonable and in order here. Now, it's sitting pretty well. I need to go back to my reference bubble, and the hardest thing about this is finding a place on the scope itself that is flat enough to actually get a bubble on there. But I did find that for the most part, I can use my turret caps, and the bubble level is going to sit on there fairly nicely. So at this point, my job is to get both the scope bubble and the barrel bubble to be level. Now you can see that my barrel bubble right there is just about perfectly level, and I just need to tweak on this a little bit. Now again, I'm going to go with the same methodology, where I'm going to pick the edge of the sort of forward line there and try to get the bubble to sit on both of them equally. And right away, I can tell you, these are sitting very well. It might need a little micro adjustment, but already I feel like I'm there. And with both bubbles sitting in the identical same spot, I can now tighten down the rings onto the scope tube, and this should be good to go. Now, after some fussing, I am certainly not perfect, but I'm as close as I'm going to mess with this at this point. I mean, these scope rings are terrible from the standpoint that you only tighten down on one side. And what that means is, because you're not tightening down on both sides, it tends to pull one side of the scope down as you tighten, which means it's going to pull you out of level. So again, as you tighten down, the bubble is going to keep creeping. And unfortunately, that means you have to find a way to compensate. So I did what I could to estimate how far off to start with the bubble, so that as I tighten these down, it would end up in alignment with my barrel. So again, not perfect, but this is good enough to get me out to the range. Removing the barrel clamp, no issues, no marring, nothing worth worrying about. So from Warbull, they did a nice job to protect your finish. And so, all right, guys, now back from the range. All in all, decent results. Now, you can look at something like this Warbull scope leveling kit and say, well, how good did it perform? Bottom line is this: your accuracy with a rifle takes into consideration a number of different variables. First and foremost, the capability of the equipment, the ballistics of the ammo itself, the environmental conditions that you're in, and the shooter's ability not just to shoot and, your trigger finger and your accuracy and your sight picture, but also my ability to appropriately tech on my gear, get things set up the right way, and have it sort of set up the right way in the first place. So for me, eliminating every possible variable when possible should aid in the overall quality of my shooting and hopefully accuracy. And so I can't say that my lack of accuracy had anything to do with the actual quality of this kit. The kit performed extremely well. You can debate whether or not I shot well. That's a different story. But taking into consideration the fact that when you look at some of these results, I feel like actually everything went very well. I feel like the setup went well. The actual zeroing of the scope was decent. And then the fact that I was able to shoot fairly reasonable groups. Now, right from the beginning, I lost a shot high. That's because I was trying to find my way onto paper, but I was able to make some quick corrections, and with exception of pulling a couple down, and I don't know if that was just ammo or probably me, I was shooting less than a 1-inch group at 25 yards, which was solid, no problem there. Moving on to my second grouping there, again, shooting within a 1-inch group. Third was a little bit looser, but at the same time, I had some sort of distractions and difficulties that I was working at within the range, really taking my time on the fourth group and tightening that up, much smaller than a sub 1-inch group, and even at that stacking huge volume of my shots. Again, minus just a couple that I pulled. So that went extremely well. Then I got onto the 100-yard range, and at that point trying to hit some steel, and I know I was dancing right around it. Had a number of solid hits, but dancing around it, and if I was missing, I wasn't missing by much. So I thought I'd throw the paper up there and evaluate it a little bit more. So at that point, taking a look at the last couple of sets, at 100 yards with cheap ammo, with terrible ballistics on a crazy windy day, and doing the best that I could, my shots were low, which is just an indication that my zero was off. But actually, my grouping was not too bad, with the exception that, I did lose a couple low. But if you look at what's up high, that's a 6-inch line right there. I was really grouping at 100 yards within 2 to 2.5 inches. That wasn't bad. And even more so, yes, again, my shots are low, but that's just an indication that my zero was off. My grouping actually is really pretty good. That's about 2.5 inches right there at 100 yards with cheap ammo. So all in all, I would say everything doing exactly what it was supposed to do. The Warbull scope leveling kit got me as close as I could possibly get, and then everything else came down to my mechanics, the ballistics, the ability of the rifle, and the conditions that I was in. So all in all, I would say very effective. And so thank you guys for following along. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was informative. Thank you to the people at Warbull who did provide this for review. Look in the description box below where you can find all of the relevant links. And if you like this content, do me a favor. Take a look at my Outer Limitless channel, which is more on my primary gear. On that channel, I cover everything from hiking, camping, and backpacking experiences, all the gear that goes with it. So from sleep systems, shelter systems, knives, axes, backpacks, flashlights, you name it. That's my Outer Limitless YouTube channel. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.